Good morning. I miss my little wingman over there. Ben, he punches all them controls for me now to remember the sequence and make sure I get it just right. Yes, sir. I've said it before, if your absence isn't felt, your presence meant nothing, right? So, do we sense, or do you ever have a sense of when you don't feel the presence of the Lord, His absence is felt? I felt that, not this past week, but the week before, it just seemed like just a dark cloud or something, just a coldness, brother. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I'll get up here and tell y'all your faith must outlast the silence of God, and what do I do? Like, where are you at? But as I've said before, when a teacher gives you the test, they're quiet, aren't they? They're quiet. 2 Samuel chapter 18, if you would. There are so many dialogues that go on in this chapter. I mean, we have, were they prepared for the battle? The king's order concerning Absalom. The wood devouring more than the sword. Absalom's mule leaving him hanging. The young servant that left Absalom alive because he didn't trust Joab. Joab's testimony. Joab and his men, how they kill Absalom despite the king's order. Then there's two more dialogues left here. We have the story of the two runners. And then, of course, at the end of the chapter, we have David's grief over Absalom. So there's a lot goes on in these 32 verses here. 33 verses. And, you know, sometimes whenever you read these stories, I see things, and I thank God He lets me see things I hadn't seen before. I mean, we've all heard, most of us that grew up in a Christian environment or in Christian homes or whatever, had heard of Absalom being hung in the oak. But how all that came about. And you would think here, I mean, God had this recorded for a reason. These different dialogues in this chapter. I mean, rather than there was a battle, Absalom got hung in a tree, the men killed him. There's some detail here that's given to us for examples and to meditate on and to think on. And the next dialogue here is the story of the two runners, Cushai and Ahimaaz. Now, Joab has killed Absalom, and it's time to send, and the battle's over. It says he blew the trumpet and restrained the people. He said, "This is enough. We've won." And the people fled whenever they killed Absalom. And this is a miracle here, because you've got the servants of David against the whole nation of Israel. Remember, Absalom had captured the hearts of the men of the country. But God, again, He doesn't need numbers to win. We fool ourselves sometimes, or we discredit ourselves because, like He said, or one of y'all mentioned a while ago, the little flock this morning. Does God need a big number? What does the Scripture say? Where 2 or 3 are gathered. So let's pick this up here in verse 19. I want to read several verses here to you. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, Let me now run and bear the king tidings, how that the Lord hath avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said unto him, Thou shalt not bear tidings this day, but thou shalt bear tidings another day. But this day thou shalt bear no tidings, because the king's son is dead. Then said Joab to Cushai, Go tell the king what thou hast seen. And Cushai bowed himself unto Joab and ran. Then said Ahimaaz the son of Zadok yet again to Joab, But howsoever, let me, I pray thee, also run after Cushai. And Joab said, Wherefore wilt thou run, my son, seeing thou hast no tidings ready? But howsoever, said he, Let me run. And he said unto him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and overran Cushai. And David sat between the two gates. Sat between the two gates. You ever been there before? That's what I was talking about week before last. I was between the two gates. You don't know, is the gate going to open, the gate going to close? You know, Absalom between heaven and earth. Here David is between the two gates. Sat between the two gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate under the wall, and lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man running along. And the watchman cried and told the king, and the king said, If he be alone, there is tidings in his mouth. And he came apace and drew near. And the watchman saw another man running. And the watchman said unto the porter, and said, Behold, another man runneth along. And the king said, He also bring tidings. And the watchman said, Methinketh the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz the son of Zadok. And the king said, He is a good man, and cometh with good tidings. And Ahimaaz called and said unto the king, All is well. And he fell down to the earth upon his face before the king, and said, Blessed be the Lord thy God, which delivereth up the men that lifteth up their hand against my lord the king. And the king said, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant, and me thy servant, I saw a great tumult, but I knew not what it was. And the king said unto him, Turn aside and stand here. And he turned aside and stood still. And behold, Cushai came. And Cushai said, Tidings, my lord the king, for the Lord hath avenged thee this day of all them that rose up against thee. And the king said unto Cushai, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Cushai answered, The enemies of my lord the king, and all that rise up against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is. Be as that young man is. Now, I want you to notice something here. I want to focus on the two runners today. Now, I've never been a runner. My wife will tell you I have two gears, slow and slower. But some of my friends run, and when I was trying to lose weight, one of my buddies was like, You need to start running. And I said, No, I do not. I'll injure my ankles or my knees, and then I'll quit. But I think Keely runs, don't you, Keely? Quite a bit. Yeah. I was not gifted with that talent. But here we have two men that were. Now we got to think, back then you didn't have the internet. The way news got around was by word of mouth or by a runner. Joab knows that David is not going to take this well. In fact, David may be angry and may kill. Listen, this king can kill you. He can say, Off with your head and you're done. So Joab here thinks he's going to protect Ahimaaz. But what does he do? He lets his pride get in the way. Now apparently he was like Forrest. He could run like the wind blows, because he overran Cushai. And he got to the king, but what happened? What was the message? We won. Is the young man safe? Well, I don't know, which is a lie, because why did Joab tell him he couldn't run? John and our dear brother here, they preached a lot lately on patience. And I told Harold Smith yesterday, I said, if I hear another one of those messages on patience, Hebrews 12 says, run with patience. See, Ahimaaz here, he wanted to run because he could. He was in a hurry, man in a hurry. Cushai persevered, just ran the race with patience. Joab told Ahimaaz, said, your tidings are not even ready. What are you going to tell the king when you get there? Cushai did a wonderful job here of telling the king his son was dead without saying that, didn't he? He said, that young man be as your enemies are. Didn't name him, didn't say he was dead. The Bible tells us to let our words be seasoned with what? And when I was talking to you in a couple of devotionals ago, I mentioned about not having a cloak of malice. A lot of times we want to run just to be run and to be seen. That was Ahimaaz's thing here. He wanted to show the great speed he had, all the talent he had, how he could get there. But when he got there, he was not prepared. Are we running this race unprepared today? What is the message in our mouth? when we finally get to the end point and it's time to deliver our message, what are we going to say? Or were we in such a hurry and so focused on running, so focused on the race, that we forget why we're in the race? Remember, this is a long-distance race. The perseverance of the saints. Emmanuel undoubtedly took a shortcut. There's no shortcuts in this. What did 2 Timothy 2:15 say? Study to show thyself approved, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. I know when our brother here challenged, or asked me, he didn't challenge me, or he told me he wanted me to start getting up here and help taking turns with John, I had to start studying, brother. And that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I studied this like I never studied it before. But to get up here and give you a message seasoned with salt, what do you have to do if you're going to do this right? I want us to go back over to John chapter 4. Are we ashamed of the gospel? See, when Ahimaaz got there, he thought David would be rejoicing over the fact that they had won. Instead, David was more interested in Absalom's situation. And Ahimaaz choked, if you will. See, I think a lot of times we're afraid to tell the bad news, but the bad news is what makes the good news the good news. What has happened to the church in America? We're not telling everybody, hey, bad is bad. The bad is what makes the good good. Cushai was prepared here. He took his time. He ran the race with patience. When he arrived, he was ready. Ahimaaz was all about himself. I find myself, pride. That's what it is. Those whole chapters there, all of that was caused by pride. Absalom's pride. Remember Ahithophel's pride. And now Ahimaaz's pride. Pride, 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 pride. Pride goeth before a. The king nullified him. Hey, you just stand over here. I don't want to hear what you got to say anymore. Obviously, you did not get the whole story here, and yet you're showing up with a half-baked story here. You can't tell me the truth. You don't want to tell me the truth, or something's wrong here. So move aside. You know what? Ahimaaz is never mentioned again in 2 Samuel. Now, he was in the prior ones. Remember, he was the one to deliver the message to David that Absalom and them were coming for him. But he's never mentioned again in 2 Samuel. Do you want to be like that, put on a shelf because you can't say this is bad and this is good? But there's a right way to do it. And that's what I love about how Cushai handled this. Listen, when we're handling the world here, it's a delicate situation, isn't it? We want to put on that cloak of malice. I guess what I say, we want to attack. Remember, we talked about this. This is the woman at the well here. Jesus encounters her. And I love in verse 4, it said, he must needs go through Samaria. In John chapter 4, in verse 4. He must needs go through Samaria. Now, why did he need to go through Samaria? He had a message. He had a message to deliver. Do we have a message to deliver? Notice here, where's it at here? In verse... Lost my place here. Give me a minute. In verse, let's pick this up in verse 16. Then Jesus saith unto her, go call thy husband and come hither. And the woman said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast 5 husbands, And he whom thou now hast is not thy husband, in that saidest thou truly. Now what did he do here? He said, you're not being honest with me, but he did not call her a liar. I want my wife to remember this when she says, how many cookies did you eat? And I say, 1. And I want her to say, a truth, you ate 1, and 10 more to go with it. What a beautiful example here of Jesus handling a sinner under the divine influence of the Father. Listen, if we're filled with the Holy Spirit while we're running the race, when we arrive at a point where we need to deliver a message, this is how we can deliver it. If we have studied to show ourselves approved. Listen, Paul, when he was writing the letter to Ephesus in Ephesians 6, after he told them to put on the whole armor of God, he said, I'm an ambassador with the gospel of peace. We're called to deliver the message, good or bad, but do it right. Do it right, or you'll end up like Emmanuel, unprepared. So as we run the race this week, patiently, I called Harold yesterday. I said, what you doing? He said, I'm sinning. I said, well, you're one of the few that'll admit it. I told him, I said, this road we're on, as John Smith said, I said, it's got a few potholes in it, don't it? But there are no shortcuts. Let's not be like Emmanuel and arrive unprepared. You know how we prepare? We read this every day. Study this every day. Just a little bit. I get busy. The past 2 weeks just seems, that's what I was telling Harold, just seems like it's been incredibly busy, Donald. But I've still tried to squeeze in time for this, regardless. Get up early in the morning before that phone starts ringing and people start hunting me. So that when they do call and need an answer, maybe I've got the right thing for them. Now, I know any answer I give them that's the right one is not of me. The tidings that Cushai bared, were they his? No, they were given to him. The tidings we bear were given to us. We want to make out like they're our tidings a lot of times. And we make a mess of it. Emmanuel's tidings were his. And you see what he did? He choked. Love y'all. Run with patience the race that's set before you so that when you get there, you've got the message. Thank you.